Hi again, everybody. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com, and this is another episode of Ask the Lawyer. Maybe you're looking for something to do on a night out, maybe a date night, a night out with the family, or out with the guys, and maybe you thought Topgolf would be fun. Well, my guest today, attorney Marc Lenahan in Dallas, says a trip to Topgolf could turn out not to be nearly as much fun as you think it would. And since, as far as we can tell, he may have sued Topgolf more than any other lawyer in the United States, he's just the person to ask about it. Marc, thank you for making some time for us today. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Rob.
So it sounds like you're saying there's more to Topgolf than may meet the eye. Explain.
Yeah. Meets the eye is the perfect phrase to introduce the problems at Topgolf, Rob. Just personally, just cases I've either represented or consulted on, we've helped 3 people who have each lost an eye at Topgolf. Just think about that. 3 separate instances where somebody lost an eye. 3 times doesn't happen in the real world. If your business had a client who lost an eye, you would instantly freak out and apologize, say, I have no idea how this happened. We're fixing it right away. We're fixing this. And if it happened a second time, you would fire anybody who was supposed to figure out what was wrong the first time and fix it. If it happened a third time, if you were a company as big as Topgolf with all their mega resources, you would close every property. You would call in experts from around the world, and you would say, guys, we've got to have this thing fixed before we put anybody else at risk. Topgolf doesn't do any of that.
Well, tell me about these 3 instances that you know of and what they have done to address it.
Well, they haven't done a thing. The first instance was one of our first cases against Topgolf. A customer was sitting in the little couches behind the tee, and a drunk hit a ball backwards, because drunks can do things like that, right, and hit her right in the eye. Oh. Since then, they serve every bit as much booze and more as before. They've squeezed in more seats, so there's more people to get hit back there. And the thing that I've been advocating for, which is that they hang nets like a batting cage around the 3 sides of the tee, they've been refusing to do for 5 or 6 years. The next person that got hit, that lost an eye, was there with a buddy. Her buddy is at the tee. He gets hit by somebody 1 tee over. He's kind of ticked about that, doesn't want it to happen again, so he scooches farther away from that guy. And in so doing, when he swings his club back, he hits her. Had there been nets there, like we told him years before, he wouldn't have been hit by the fellow to his left, and she wouldn't have been hit on the other side by him. Wow. The third person, again, not at the tee, a club snaps, turns into a spear. You can imagine the shaft flying off in the air, goes right into the eye, taking it. Could have even been worse. Could have killed. Again, all 3 instances would have been prevented if they just hung the nets like we'd said. And the idea of the club snapping, that's not an uncommon thing. You can imagine these clubs. Any golfer out there right now is going to know that when they golf, their favorite clubs get used maybe 100 times a year, even if they're avid golfers. Well, at Topgolf, those clubs are getting used hundreds of times a day, and they're not being used by people who love golf and live and breathe it. They're rough on the clubs. They hit the ground hard. They're being kind of crazy, and they take a beating.
It would seem to me, Marc, it just makes sense. I mean, if you just had a driving range, that's dangerous enough. You've got golf balls, you've got golf clubs, but then when you mix in a lot of alcohol in the mix, that takes it to a whole new level, right?
Yeah, the alcohol is a huge problem. They're very, very proud of their alcohol, and they've got huge drinks. They serve them with double straws, and they serve them everywhere. And really, alcohol is the driver behind Topgolf. It looks all to the world like it is a family-friendly golf range. It's not. It is a nightclub in disguise. The last time I pulled the statistics out of Texas, they don't update that often. These were statistics available for smaller, older Topgolfs. So 2 floors, fewer people. Now there are 3 and 4 floors, way more people at each tee, 10 people to a tee. Back then it was 2 or 3. Back then, they were clearing $500,000 in drink sales per location per month on the good months. Now I'm sure the big locations are over $1 million every month. It's all about the booze.
The examples you cited, are those the most extreme of the injuries you've heard, or are there some even worse than that?
Well, let's break down extreme into 2 different ways. The extremely common injuries I believe happen every day. Topgolf says no, not every day. Those are teeth being knocked out, concussions, lacerations, injuries like that. I think those are happening every day, and I think people are going to the emergency room, both customers and employees, every single day. The most extreme physical injuries are, of course, the people that have lost an eye. A fellow who was fixing a tee went over the net and ended up partially paralyzed. And an employee in this case was well behind the tee. Somebody lost their club because they're greasy clubs by inexperienced drunk golfers, loses the club, goes back, hits her in the face. She's now 6, I think, reconstructive surgeries in on trying to get her old face back.
Wow. And why have you been able to get a reason from Topgolf, or what do you guess is the reason for not putting up the netting, like you said, or doing something to make it more safe?
Yeah, the answer is it's pretty simple. It's the answer for a lot of bad business decisions, which is money. And I don't mean that it would cost them much money to put the nets up. They sneeze as much money as that would cost every 15 minutes. That's not a problem. They don't want to cut into the carefree party vibe that they have. They think it'd make drink sales harder. They think just because of delivery. And they think that they don't want people being safety conscious, because safety conscious people don't drink as much. So they flat out have made the decision that they're going to make more money by putting your kids at risk of things like teeth and blinding and concussions. And that's more important to them than protecting them. If they just did that, just hung up the nets on the 3 sides like a batting cage, protecting all the customers from each other, 90% of the injuries at Topgolf would disappear overnight. I'm sure of it.
Do you think, as a company, they're making the decision, Mark, hey, we'll make more money in the long run if we have to pay some of the clients that Mark represents, some money, we still come out ahead if we don't put up the netting?
Oh, that's absolutely fact. The way litigation works, injury litigation, pretty much all around America, is that the first time something happens, you kind of get away with it a little bit. It's called the first bite rule, and it comes from dog bite litigation. If you have a 10-year-old dog that's been sweet its entire life and then it bites somebody, you say, we didn't know. It's never happened before. When it bites somebody a second time, it's a big problem for them. Then they can be exposed because now they knew better. We did a whole slew of litigation, and each category was essentially a first bite. It was somebody that lost an eye, somebody that fell over, somebody that got hit with a ricochet off the ball cart, ricochet off the dispensers, ricochet off of whatever it may be. Each time was the first incident. So it's going to take consecutive injuries of the things we've already litigated to really, really put pressure on them. The most powerful, game-changing lawsuits ahead of us will be if the club breaks again and gives us a severe injury, a blinding, or a death, which is certainly possible. And I've told Topgolf that when somebody gets killed there, and people do get killed in golfing, it's not an impossible thing. It happened a few months ago to a 6-year-old at a regular range. Her father killed her from 20-something feet away. When somebody gets killed at Topgolf, I'm going to take all my evidence and I'm going to go to the district attorney in that county, and I'm going to say, this is a case where you need to prosecute the company for homicide, because they've had every chance in the world to protect people, and they've just chosen to take their money to the bank instead.
Has the government gotten involved at all, or in your opinion, do they need to get more involved?
I would love for the government to get more involved. One of the biggest changes we've made at Topgolf, our litigation's only been able to change some things, but one of the things we changed was we made their fall safety nets, the little thing that keeps you from hitting the ground when you go over the edge, from 3.5, 4 feet in different locations, out to 5 feet everywhere around the world. That was a big win. We really wanted it to be 8 feet, but we're glad we made the change. But the truth is, we didn't make that change by ourselves. What we did is we took all of our evidence and we handed it to a code compliance officer in a county where they were wanting to open up. And it was the code compliance officer, an architect there, who worked with us to try to understand things. And she's the one who put her foot down and said, you're not opening up in my county unless you do at least 5 feet. She was strong, courageous. It's a hard thing to do. Cities, counties fall all over themselves to get the kind of money that Topgolf brings in for jobs and tax revenues. So that she was willing to say, you do it our way or you leave, is hard. It's going to take a lot more strong, courageous code compliance officers drawing hard lines. It would be very easy for the next one to say, not in our county, not in our city, unless you hang nets on three sides. Truth is, I don't see that many code compliance officers having that kind of sway over their city council because the city council is so worried about revenue.
What's going to happen if I'm injured at Topgolf? What does Topgolf do? What can I expect?
They're going to tell you to go jump in the lake. They are absolutely going to tell you every single time it is not their fault if somebody else loses a club or somebody mishits a ball. It's not their problem. So you come to somebody like me and Topgolf says, hey, don't sue me. Not our fault. That means we've got a couple choices. We can, fight that. But what Topgolf wants you to do is to sue the person, their other customer who lost the club or something like that. So now think about this from, say you took out, you have a small business and you took your gang out to a year-end celebration for a job well done, around December. And one of them was to get blinded by somebody in a neighboring bay. The person in the neighboring bay maybe has no insurance, probably doesn't. Topgolf is telling your employee to sue the company, your company, for their blinding. And well, you say, well, maybe I got workers' comp. Well, workers' comp is going to say, no, this wasn't a work event. Right. They're not working. This is a party. Or perhaps one of your employees is the one who hits a ball off center and it goes to the left, hurts somebody. Heck, even Tiger Woods hits the ball off center sometimes. Sure. Remember, what's Topgolf going to tell them? Topgolf is going to tell that person, no, you go see Rob's company. It's his party. He's the one who wasn't being careful over there. So you try to do a nice thing for your crew. You could end up either with an injured crew member or a lawsuit against you for injuring somebody else. They do not care about their customers' welfare and safety or financially. They really will give you the stiff arm. And I'll tell you, Rob, I've been a crime victims lawyer for 20 years. I deal with really miserable people, true blue murderers. Topgolf, unlike anybody I've ever seen, is just relentless in its willingness to see its people hurt. And I see some pretty terrible things doing what I do.
And you've mentioned earlier, you were talking about customers most recently, but it sounds like employees are just as much or maybe more danger because they spend a lot more time there.
Well, and think about employees. OSHA requires, first off, OSHA won't go out to the site unless there's a death, and not just a death of a customer. It's got to be a death of an employee for OSHA to be required to go out there. If that were to happen, they would see that Topgolf doesn't do any of the things that OSHA would expect other businesses to do. Any business that has employees working near an edge is required to have personal fall protection. Any business and Topgolf has none of it, even though its people are near the edge constantly. Any business where people's teeth and eyes and head injuries were at constant risk would require mouth guards, protective glasses, helmets. What message would it send to the customers if their employees were walking around with eye protection or mouth guards, for goodness sakes? It would definitely scare people away, which is exactly why they're saying to their employees, you're going without any protection. We don't care.
So, Mark, let me just play devil's advocate just for a second, because there will be people who say, attorneys want to legislate or want to take the fun out of everything. People should assume some risk when they go there. Maybe there's a middle ground, because obviously the employees aren't going to wear helmets and goggles when they're there. Is there a middle ground? What do you say to people that might say that?
Well, in fact, every bit of those things, the helmets, the goggles, the mouth guards, none of that would be necessary if they just treated it like a batting cage, hang the nets on three sides. At their location here in Dallas, they took over a prior golf range that was already there. That prior golf range had, in fact, a batting cage on property. They know how batting cages work, fenced in, netted in. And I could tell you, nobody's ever called me from that batting cage telling me that they got blinded being on the other side of the fence or the net. They just hang up those nets on three sides. These injuries go away.
Mark, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. Very enlightening information. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely, Rob. Anytime, sir.
That's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyer. My guest has been attorney Marc Lenahan of Dallas. If you want the best information about personal injury law, or you're ready to choose a lawyer that lawyers choose, be sure to visit askthelawyer.com. Also, take a second, click on the button at the bottom of the screen to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. I'm Rob Rosenthal with askthelawyer.com.